This is Iryna Zarutska, 23, Ukrainian refugee wearing a pizza-stained uniform from another double shift. She takes her usual seat on car 7 of Charlotte, North Carolina's Blue Line light rail. First row, aisle side, near the door. A small precaution in her adopted homeland. Iryna had come to America for the safety Ukraine could no longer provide. She came to build an American dream in place of the nightmare her homeland now endured. One row back sits DeCarlos Brown Jr., 34 years old, multiple arrests spanning over a decade, armed robbery, assault, terroristic threats. 7 months earlier, police found him in a psychotic breakdown, claiming man-made materials inside his body controlled him. They recommended immediate psychiatric commitment. Instead, a judge released him on a written promise. The train hums forward. Iryna checks her phone. Messages from family in war-torn Kiev. Brown watches her through half-closed eyes, slumped against the train window. The car enters a tunnel. Fluorescent lights flicker overhead. His hand drifting towards his jacket pocket. Brown calmly takes out a folding knife from his hoodie. Brown rises in an instant and extends his arm with stomach-churning speed. 3 stab wounds, neck, shoulder, back, delivered with cold precision. Iryna huddles into a ball, earbuds dangling, silent. She's in shock. Other passengers look on in confusion. Brown pockets the blade, walks through the car, staining the floor with blood drips, and exits at the next stop, all the while muttering, "I got that white girl. I got that white girl." He vanishes into the Charlotte night, leaving behind a spreading pool of blood and stunned passengers who can't yet comprehend what they've witnessed. Paramedics arrive, no pulse. The American dream Iryna fought to build dies with her on the cold metal floor of car 7. And then, silence. Search Iryna Zarutska on Associated Press. You'll find this. Nothing. 0 results. Try the New York Times. Nothing. How about CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, Washington Post, NPR? A complete blackout across every major outlet. Now that might not seem that crazy, but those same organizations had published 74,221 articles about George Floyd, 5,897 on Trayvon Martin, and interestingly enough, over 100 on Daniel Penny before his trial concluded. Yet for Iryna, a refugee murdered on camera by a repeat offender, nothing. This is systematic erasure. Modern media gatekeepers decide which victims matter and which disappear. The formula is obvious. Certain demographic combinations trigger wall-to-wall coverage. Others trigger silence. Imagine with me for a moment that the races of these two had been reversed. A white ex-convict arrested 14 times kills an innocent black immigrant. We would be seeing that footage every day for the next 6 months. Within hours, social media began exposing this coverage disparity. One viral meme asked, which of these 2 immigrants got wall-to-wall sympathetic news coverage, comparing Iryna to an MS-13 gang member who had received sympathetic profiles, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The answer was obvious to everyone except professional journalists. When social media pressure finally forced mainstream acknowledgement, the institutional response revealed everything you could possibly want to hear. Brian Stelter complained that Trump-aligned influencers were posting up a storm and warned that some comments are racist, stoking fear of African Americans. The story became not about journalistic failure, but the dangerous people exposing that failure.
Really, over the weekend, Elon Musk, Charlie Kirk, other Trump-aligned figures succeeded in making this senseless death a symbol of big city crime. We heard President Trump asked about it yesterday when he was heading home from New York City. He didn't seem to know much about it. He said he would get briefed, and then today, Trump did know all about it. That's exactly what has happened here. This story has trickled up from local news to social media and now to the president's attention. And it's being used, as you said, Brianna, as a political symbol, with MAGA media calling for more forceful punishment punishments and more incarceration. I have to say, some of the replies to Musk, some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman. The open racism on sites like X today, it's eye-popping.
CNN focused not on the murder, but how the story became a political flashpoint.
Horrific new video of a Ukrainian refugee's murder caught on camera. It is absolutely horrific. Trump is now seizing on this to push his nationwide crackdown.
Axios blamed surveillance cameras for accelerating outrage rather than investigating why a dangerous criminal was free after 14 arrests and multiple violent crimes. The technology that documented the crime became the problem, not the crime itself. Equal Justice Initiative analysis of over 2,000 criminal cases found stark disparities based on perpetrator-victim demographics. When white defendants kill black victims, stories emphasized humanity and systemic injustice. When black defendants killed white victims, coverage focused on mental illness or avoided the story entirely. Mugshots appeared in 45% of cases involving black defendants, versus only 8% for white defendants.
Certain people have been looking for an opportunity to find a case like this, to make a point like this. I want to play, this is Charlie Kirk, why he says this hasn't gotten a lot of attention.
A white Ukrainian refugee was murdered just because she was white. Everybody knows that, obviously. If a random white person simply walked up to and stabbed a nice, law-abiding black person for no reason, it would be an apocalyptically huge national story used to impose national sweeping political changes on the whole country. Instead, Megan Basham, no one seems to care when a white woman gets stabbed to the death. Wow.
He said white a lot.
They've been looking for opportunities to make this some sort of like reciprocal George Floyd situation. And that's the part that I think he's almost giving away the game. And it's sad to see a lot of people going along with it.
The Bureau of Justice Statistics data makes this bias even more problematic. From 2017 to 2021, violent incidents involving black offenders against white victims totaled 2.38 million, compared to white on black incidents at 370,000, a 6.4 to 1 ratio. Yet coverage patterns were inversely proportional.
We don't know why that man did what he did. We don't know how to deal with people who were hurting in the way this man was hurting. Hurt people hurt people. What happened was horrible. No one mentioned the word race, white, black, or anything except him.
When audio emerged of Brown saying, "I got that white girl, I got that white girl," immediately after the attack, it confirmed targeted racial hatred. Media outlets had direct evidence of a hate crime caught on camera, yet the story remained buried. This suppression reveals an editorial algorithm operating across supposedly independent news organizations. The consistency of the blackout suggested coordination rather than coincidence.
These whites that are liberal, that run the media organizations, hold blacks to a lower standard than whites. And they're afraid of getting called racist, as Greg said, by their white colleagues. And they're afraid of Sharpton haranguing them about airing the community's dirty laundry. Because usually when beautiful blonde women get hurt, it's all over the television. Natalie Holloway, the girls in Idaho. You can't stop from seeing it. Now, this you'd think is the poster child for asylum seeker. Yep. She's from Europe, so she can assimilate easily. Her country is literally being invaded by Putin. She qualifies for refugee status, and she was working, so she's not a public charge. And then you have DeCarlos, who's the poster child for permissive politicians. The guy's a schizophrenic. He's been in and out of the court system his whole life since he was a minor, and he's obviously a threat to himself and everybody around him. And they turn the guy loose on the rest of us. And it's about, they don't want to incarcerate, they want to rehabilitate.
Brown's case demolishes the rehabilitation mythology keeping dangerous criminals cycling through the justice system. U.S. Sentencing Commission research tracking 13,883 violent offenders found 63.8% were rearrested within 8 years, with median time to arrest of just 16 months. For offenders with 5 or more prior convictions, Brown's category, rates approached 84%.
Guns off the street. What we got to do, if we really want to see homicides go down, is keep bad guys with guns in jail, because when they're in jail, they can't be in community shooting people. So when people talk about what we're going to do different, or what we should do different, what we need to do different, that's the thing that we need to do different. We need to keep violent people in jail. Right now, the average homicide suspect has been arrested 11 times prior to them committing a homicide. That is a problem. That is a problem.
Manhattan Institute analysis reveals why rehabilitation fails for violent repeat offenders. While programs can reduce property crime recidivism by 20 to 30%, they have minimal impact on violent recidivism. The average effect is a 10% reduction, meaning 65% of violent offenders in successful programs still reoffend versus 75% in control groups. International data confirms this. Norway's celebrated Halden prison shows 67% recidivism for repeat violent offenders despite intensive programming. Sweden's system yields 71% for inmates with extensive violent histories. These mathematics are stark. Offenders with 3 or more prior arrests represent 6% of criminals, but commit 60% of violent crimes. 60%. Each judicial release represents statistical certainty of future victims. Brown had 14 arrests since 2011, yet walked free to kill Iryna. The deflection strategy of these media outlets has extremely documented origins. The journalist scandal of 2010 exposed a private forum with over 400 left-leaning journalists coordinating coverage strategies. Internal documents revealed active conspiracy to suppress stories damaging preferred narratives.
It is very clear that this country is still struggling with racism. We still have racism showing up in almost every institution. We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, it's just pure race mongering, hate mongering. It's wrong.
Spencer Ackerman explicitly outlined the strategy. If we're forced to discuss the Reverend Wright controversy, we should use the opportunity to make it a racial controversy in general. Pick out the most racist attackers and use them as a cudgel. The same playbook was deployed against those exposing Iryna's story. Shift focus from murder to alleged racism of those demanding coverage.
I love this from Axios. MAGA erupts after Israeli official charged in child sex ring flees the United States. Now, with all due respect, Tal Axelrod, I don't mind covering the story about the reaction from conservatives, and this is just as an aside. The point is, you can literally just write about the Israeli official charged in a sex ring fleeing. You don't need the headline to be MAGA erupts. In fact, the story is the Israeli official, and then in that story you write, MAGA, here's how they responded. The point is, it's not the first time they frame stories like this. Stabbing video fuels MAGA's crime message. Why not just write, story goes viral, here's the reaction? They could literally write, brutal murder has taken, dominates weekend's narrative. Murder of Iryna Zarutska could be the centerfold. Then you can say, after the fact, here's the reaction from people.
Energy from pro-Trump activists. They picked up on this video from local news and ran with it. It's a little bit like the times when civil rights groups have raised attention about police-involved shootings. In this case, it is Trump-aligned influencers who are posting up a storm about this case on social media.
This coordination infrastructure never disappeared. Journalist membership included journalists now holding senior positions at CNN, NBC, The Washington Post, The New York Times, and NPR. The silence extended into every level of institutional power, creating comprehensive erasure that protected political narratives over public safety. Representative Jasmine Crockett crystallized the framework.
I want to be clear that, law enforcement isn't to prevent crime. Law enforcement solves crime, okay? That is what they're supposed to do. They are supposed to solve crimes, not necessarily prevent them from happening, per se.
This was explicit rejection of crime prevention in favor of post hoc response, ensuring a steady stream of victims while avoiding accountability.
And if you really want to know who the criminals are in this country, you can Google it. You don't have to trust me. But the people that commit 80% of the most violent crimes in this country are white supremacists. Yet for whatever reason, they sit and they serve at the pleasure of the president. They are the ones that were there on January 6th, tearing our democracy down physically. And now we have them tearing us down right here from within.
Judge Teresa Stokes embodied judicial corruption. She was the judge who released Brown despite clear danger signals while simultaneously profiting from Charlotte Community Treatment Solutions, a facility billing Medicaid for the same individuals she kept releasing. Public records show the facility generated over $2 million annually. Charlotte Mayor V. Lyle's initial reaction to this tragedy was to defend the, quote, homeless and mentally ill without mentioning Brown's extensive criminal history or judicial failure. She promised more mental health funding while ignoring that Brown had already cycled through multiple programs. Again, 14 mugshots. 14.
Are prisons obsolete?
Whew, coming through with the quotes, coming through with the titles of the books. I have to read that, actually. I haven't read that as yet. But I think that, frankly, I mean, what purpose do they serve? Right?
Dan Crenshaw summarized the moral inversion. DeCarlos Brown was guilty 14 times over, but he was free. Iryna Zarutska was innocent. Now she's dead. This isn't mercy. It's systematic sacrifice of innocence to maintain power structures, corrupt power structures. Modern technology now poses the biggest existential challenge to the mass media narrative control. High-definition cameras, smartphones, and social media have democratized documentation, making information control impossible.
And perhaps most shamefully of all, the majority of the media, many outlets in this room, decided that her murder was not worth reporting on originally because it does not fit a preferred narrative. Many of the journalists in this room spilled plenty of ink trying to smear Daniel Penny for defending a subway car from a deranged lunatic in New York City, but none of those same reporters lift a finger to write stories about an actual murderer.
As one commentator noted, there are too many cameras now, too many recording devices. You can't tell the public that this guy was a tender young scholar with a bright future. The old playbook of character rehabilitation breaks down when behavior is documented in 4K resolution. The Associated Press exemplifies this schizophrenia. They spent 3 years filing 7,000 public records requests documenting police use of less lethal force, producing comprehensive databases. Yet they couldn't spare a single article for murder caught on multiple cameras with undisputed evidence of a racial hate crime. When citizens begin sharing footage and audio on social media, legacy outlets attacked the platforms rather than investigating evidence. The messenger became the target when the message threatened their preferred storylines. When institutions failed, ordinary citizens stepped up. Social media became the newsroom establishment media abandoned. Charlie Kirk's posts reached 2.4 million views. Viral memes spread to tens of millions. Audio evidence circulated despite the suppression of the media. Statistical analysis gained massive traction. Citizens compiled their own databases of similar ignored cases. Ben Shapiro identified the core mechanism.
Unfortunately, Jesse, I think it's perfectly obvious why the media deep sixes this particular story. And the answer is perfectly obvious when you look at the races of the people involved. If this had been a black victim and a white perpetrator, then it would have led the news nightly for months on end. You would have had riots in the streets. If it's the reverse situation, the media will completely ignore it because it doesn't match up with their preferred narrative of a white supremacist country that is cracking down on black people, even though statistically speaking, obviously, the vast majority of crime is intra-racial, meaning white on white or black on black. Black on white crime on a per capita basis is significantly higher than white on black crime. That does not match up with the media narrative about white supremacy in the United States.
This framework makes certain statistical realities unspeakable in mainstream discourse. Jesse Kelly argued the pattern represents intention rather than incompetence. Stop calling it soft on crime. They are pro-murder, pro-rape, pro-theft. Communists aren't stunned when one of their animals attacked someone. That's the goal. The citizens' response demonstrated what establishment institutions fear. When people have access to primary evidence and communication platforms, traditional gatekeepers become unnecessary. When Iryna Zarutska's murder was erased from mainstream coverage, millions of Americans refused to accept the silence. They shared footage, exposed double standards, demanded accountability, and created the journalism their supposed watchdogs abandoned. Iryna was 23. She survived Russian bombs only to die from American institutional failure. Her story was almost memory holed by coordinated silence, but the people preserved her name and exposed the machine that tried to erase her. Car 7's cameras recorded the truth in perfect detail. When institutions demand you ignore documented evidence in favor of preferred narratives, remember that their power depends entirely on your compliance.
The attacker racialized it in his own telling of this situation. And we all know this. Any honest observer of your program knows this, including Van Jones even knows this deep down, which is that, of course, if a random white person on a subway took out a knife and stabbed a black girl senselessly to death, there would be massive media coverage, there would be policy changes, there would be people having to apologize for this. We saw this in George Floyd, and yet, for whatever reason, this situation has not garnered even a fraction of that kind of outrage or backlash.